Morning light falls gently through the window as a boy adjusts his uniform before the mirror, smoothing his hair until he feels ready. Today marks the beginning of his duty as a court blacksmith, and he vows that steady effort will one day lead him toward his dream of becoming the greatest. After tying his boots, he steps outside, where a soft breeze scatters petals around him, helping him relax and feel grateful for everything. Holding on to that feeling, he promises himself to give everything he has. Crossing the courtyard, his eyes falls upon a girl nearby. Their eyes meet briefly before she turns and asks if he belongs to the forge section. Her clear voice catches him off guard, and for a second he wonders if she might be of noble blood. Realizing that he needs to answer, he admits that he does and asks how she knew. She calmly points to the qualification card hanging from his pocket. Noticing it nearly slipping free, he snatches it back, and in relief he thanks heavens. He thanks her sincerely, but she brushes it off, noting instead that he looks rather young and asks if he is new. Posing proudly, he announces that this is his very first day and introduces himself as Fake. His burst of enthusiasm startles her slightly, and realizing it, he softens at once, adding that he was only practicing and he began apologizing for the slip. She gives a faint smile, assuring him it is no trouble, and finds his clumsy sincerity unexpectedly kind. She introduces herself as Alicia Bernest, and he blurts out her name with honorifics, startled by the idea that she could be a noble. She confirms it with an easy smile, adding there is no need for formality, though he still addresses her with respect. She still tells him not to worry. A rather awkward silence stays between them until he asks what brought her here. She admits she was supposed to attend the ball but slipped away, and shares on how she is tired of entertaining nobles in her chambers. His curiosity shows, but before he can speak further, she tilts her head and asks if she may pose a question. Seeing his puzzled look, she explains that she is uncertain about her own path but wants to hear his. With calm resolve, he shares his dream of becoming the greatest blacksmith in the world. The words catch her off guard, and after a pause, she laughs slightly, asking if he truly believes if it is possible. He assures her he does, and he lets her know that he is aware of the challenge, but determined to give everything he has. They both started to earn each other's respect, and right there both learned that there is always a person better than us in the world grinding for the best. As he leaves her with light steps, he was about to enter to the great gates and was finally about to take his first step forward towards his dream. Holding on to these thoughts, he walks toward a tall set of doors, and he immediately recognizes them as the forge's entrance. He draws a steady breath, and he pushes them open and calls out a cheerful greeting to mark the start of his new life. Just as he begins to daydream about a brighter future, a big and brutal fist slams into him, sending him flying to the side. His new abusive teacher just sees him for the first time and he punched him in front of everyone, and he grabs him by his shirt and lifts him up using brute force and spew that he should quit wasting time and get to work, and with a rageful voice, he started ordering him to maintain the swords and not leave until the task is complete. In a heartbeat, the fragile vision he held of life at court shatters, and there he lowers his head and he gives in and started to live his days of torment. 3 years dragged by. He now serves as a court blacksmith, though the work is nothing like what he once imagined. Instead of forging grand weapons, his days are consumed by endless maintenance. Back in the countryside his skill won him praise, enough to secure his place here, but inside the palace it earns him nothing but ridicule. Argos, the forge master, never misses a chance to put him down, declaring him useless and even docking his pay for minor mistakes. Whenever he dares to object, the old man mocks him further and punishes him again. Though the workload should be shared by the entire section, the burden always falls on him alone. His complaints bring only harsher lectures, each beating framed as a lesson for his growth. Over time, he starts to believe them, convincing himself he truly is lacking skills compared to the others. The sad thought grabbed him, and he started to believe that every failure was really his fault. With no rest days and no time to breathe, he accepts every blow and insult, even when his seniors strike him and laugh while telling him to reflect before finishing all the maintenance alone by the holiday's end. His weak answers were always a yes. Although, He was sad and wanted to get out of this. He really couldn't do anything. One day, as all of the staff were enjoying their time and they began to boast about the evening ball, they leave together, and he overhears them mention Alicia, the noble girl from the neighboring country, who was going to be there tonight. This name lingered in his thoughts, but as his abusive master shuts the forge room door behind him and locks it, poor soul was once again consumed by the suffocating heat of his work. Usually work like this generates so much heat that normal human lungs give in, and working there he cries for his misfortune and pain. He braces for another sleepless night, knowing even his supposed day off will vanish under the weight of unfinished work of others. The thought of rest feels far away, and he blames himself for falling behind. Setting a sword onto the slab, he begins the enchantment process. A blacksmith's duty is not only forging but also giving weapons magic enhancement that sharpens blades and strengthens steel. Though it fades after a week and must be renewed. The task is simple in theory: read the magical script, channel energy into its symbols, repair what remains or rebuild the pattern entirely if it has worn away. One weapon after another passes through his hands until exhaustion overtakes him and he drifts into sleep without noticing. A soft touch on his head wakes him, and he startles, realizing that he is too late and he has wasted a lot of his precious time. In panic, he jolts upright, as fear of his master completely surrounds him, and he knew at this rate he was never going to finish in time. His sudden action scares Alicia, who had came to check on him. Seeing her take sharp step back, he drops into a deep bow, and he started muttering apologies over and over again. She gently tells him that there is no need to apologize, but he insists on showing respect, convinced he has offended the noble. She brushes it off with ease, but shares on how she is more interested in watching the forge than in apologies and formalities. Whenever invited from her neighboring country, she always makes time to visit the blacksmith section, and he recalls hearing his seniors mention her at the ball last night. Sweat runs down his spine, and as he realizes he is still in shabby clothes which were unwashed and smelly. She notices his sad and tired state and warns that he could catch a cold from sleeping outside, and she kept asking if he is all right. He forces a smile, assuring her he is fine, though his thoughts reveal otherwise. The condition he was in was truly beyond any help, and he knew that he needs to make the most of her time right now. When the ball will come to an end, she will likely return to her home. As he had lost track of time in his sleep, his mind floats, and she softly calls his name. As she points out to his pale look and condition, her hand stretches out, and she gently brushes his cheek. She asks him if he is hurt, but he quickly denies being hurt. However, the bruises told a different story. Standing abruptly, he leaves her wondering if she had offended him somehow. What she does not know and see is his own shame. He knows she is far beyond his reach, yet he still wants to look dependable before her, not beaten down and pathetic. When she remarks that his injury looks painful and wishes she had a potion to help, he hides it with a shady and weak reply, apologizing for not being able to offer tea and saying he still has work. She only smiles, asking if she can perhaps watch him instead. Though hesitant, he agrees, and immediately he returns to his work while she on the other hand just quietly stands close by, silently observing his every single action carefully. While working, he notices one of the magic letters fading from the blade, its important inscription slowly breaking apart. Beside him, Alicia quietly remarks that his maintenance is precise and beautiful, her words carrying a genuine admiration that makes him pause. She observes the countless weapons stacked in the room and asks if he handled them all himself. He admits that he did, reminding her that this is all his duty since he is considered the lowest in the division. If he cannot at least do this much, he reflects to himself, that then, he could never really become a top blacksmith of the world. If that is the case, then his ambitions and dreams will remain a distant idea. She admits she never realized the work of a blacksmith was so difficult, yet insists it is impressive he can manage so much alone. When he brushes her praise, she gently takes his hand, telling him again how amazing it is. The warmth of her words and touch quickly fills him with hope, happiness, and warm feelings. Though deep down he denies it, convinced he is nothing but incompetent and pathetic. Still, trying to look strong before her. In the next second, tears begin to fall before he can stop them. He really had no one beside him all this time, and a warmth of another human gives him hope and assurance that perhaps he is not a garbage that he has been thinking that he is. The brutal beating and abuse that he had to endure all this time just made him burst into tears in front of a girl he met once. Startled, she asks what is wrong and if he is hurt, and immediately he hides his teary face. Seeing this, she embraces him firmly, and she begs him to tell her everything, and she refuses to let go of him until he does. He hesitates and was fearful, and he began to make up excuses knowing that he can't run away from his masters. However, under her warmth and sincerity, he ends up telling her about everything, all the pain, the misery, and the tears. Once he started, the words kept flowing from his mouth, his shame, the years of humiliation he has never shared with anyone. He lets her know of everything. For a moment he wonders if it is improper to pour out his weakness to the daughter of a duke, but she only strokes his head gently and calls the situation absurd, and quickly she began apologizing for not noticing sooner. His tears well up again, and as he cries out apologies for talking so much, the poor soul was deeply ashamed of breaking down before her. Yet even in his shame, he tried his best to not appear so pitiful and weak in her eyes. As this was happening, from the back, the forge door bursts open and a knight storms in, barking and yelling at the incompetent blacksmith to enhance his sword at once. It is Argos, a man known for his rough tongue. However, the moment he notices Alicia standing nearby, immediately his manner changes and he became a heavenly man with respect and politeness in his every word. Fake braces himself, thinking how he would normally get beat up by now, but it seemed like her presence spares him this time. Argos orders the blade repaired. He walks towards him with weak steps, and he takes the sword in his hand, and just by looking, he checks it and he frowns. He shares that the sword had already deteriorated despite being enhanced only a few days ago. As he restores the inscription, he warns the knight not to push it too hard, explaining that the enchantment has worn faster than expected. Irritation fills Argos's eyes hearing these things from an insect he loves to beat, and for a moment he snaps, and deep down he wanted to beat him and remind him that his sword was weak because of his lack of talent, but glancing at Alicia, he quickly softens his tone and asks if the enchantment on his sword can get upgraded more. He calmly replies that the enchantment is already reinforced to its limit, but the ordinary steel given tonight is of poor quality, and reckless fighting will always cause the spell to break. With Alicia watching, Argos swallows boiling anger, and if this was a normal situation, he would have been beaten to a pulp by now for talking this much. Once the process was done, Fake returns the sword with a polite bow, telling him it is ready for use. The knight makes a hasty retreat, offering Alicia a walk around the palace, but she declines kindly, wishing him luck with his duties. He accepts with a stiff bow and departs. When the forge falls quiet again, she turns to Fake, asking gently if he always endures such treatment. He replies with a weak voice on how this was the most normal conversation he had with his customer, and after saying this he was ashamed that she has again seen his weakness, thinking how hopeless he must look before the one he likes. She warns that if he keeps pushing himself like this, his body will break. He answers that quitting is not an option, and if he leaves the palace forge, he will lose his place as a blacksmith in this country altogether. He explains with a sad and hopeless voice that quitting is not so simple. After his first year, he had begged Margos to let him leave, but the forge master threatened to strip away his license if he did. Without certification he could never work as a blacksmith again, and if he tried forging in secret, discovery would mean arrest and much more brutal outcome. The weight of it presses on him as he admits he has been trapped ever since he met her years ago. Hearing this, Alicia's composure shakes. And in the next second, she grips his hand tightly, and her eyes were full of urgency. She lets him know that she had actually come to speak with him about something important. After a pause, her words spill out, and she asks him if both of them can marry each other. These words hit him like a 100-pound hammer, and his mind goes numb, wondering if he misheard the word marriage. However, this all was not a dream and his life was about to change forever. She repeats it with quiet resolve, and her words quietly began to take effect. Startled, he he stutters with his words, asking if she means marriage as in a man and woman living together, having kids and starting a family. She nods, confirming his suspicion, leaving him completely speechless. The meaning to her words is exactly what he thought, and yet his heart cannot grasp on how such words could come from her lips with so much passion and hope. Alicia's sudden proposal leaves him shaken, and when she quickly adds that it is not meant in a strange way, Fake listens in disbelief. She explains that many suitors wait for her hand, yet she wants none of them, so she needs his protection. Because he is a blacksmith, just like her father, she could use that as a reason to convince her family. He points at himself in confusion, asking what she means, and she begins to tell him her family's history. Generations ago, her ancestors presented the king with a national treasure sword, and from that honor they were raised to nobility, with the duty of always keeping blacksmiths close in case of war. It was never about blood, she insists, only skill, and so she offers him the position of her fiancé. He scratches his head in confusion, and started asking her to give him time. But she pleads, saying she is drowning in blind dates and endless suitors, and while she would choose the man she truly loves if she could, until then she wants him as her shield. If he comes to her country, she promises that she would secure his blacksmithing license, sparing him the torment he suffers here. He doubts himself, muttering that he is hardly a good blacksmith, but she quickly interrupts. She tells him she has always admired his work, his talent, and more than that, his sincerity and dedication. Holding his hand firmly, she asks again if he would like to tie a knot. His thoughts stumble over her kindness and her warmth, realizing how often he tried to ignore the feelings that now rise inside him. He asks in fear if being her fiancé would only be a disguise, and what would happen if it went further. She answers honestly, saying she would rather pretend with him than be forced into marriage with someone she does not know, and if their fake marriage stays the same, that alone would be enough for her. He thinks bitterly that she cannot just say it so casually because her words only make his feelings more tangled. To her, it is only a cover, not a true bond, and perhaps she only pities him for having nowhere else to go. Yet even if marriage is impossible, living near her as a blacksmith would already be enough for him. With quiet resolve, he agrees to be her fiancé, and the answer stuns her. She asks if he is truly certain, and when he confirms, she smiles and tells him about a ball that evening, suggesting they return together once it ends. She even asks if he might quit his current job, but he hesitates, explaining he cannot leave immediately. In his mind, he recalls the threat of punishment if he ever tried, remembering the beating he once endured before. But now, with her by his side, he hopes things might turn out differently. She gently insists that he stop calling her with formality, reminding him that as her fiancé, his position no longer matters. The two share a glance, ready to face what comes next. Later, he stands before Margos and declares that he can no longer endure the work, and he lets him know that he wishes to quit for personal reasons. Margos roars in rage, demanding and screaming if he forget his debts, and while this happened other knights began to push themselves onto him, making sure that he folds in pressure and fear. His mind races, tempted to back down, but then he recalls the promise he made to her. He shouts that he cannot keep up with the work and wants to resign. Margos narrows his eyes and asks what he will do afterward, demanding to see proof of employment. When Fake replies that he has another place waiting, Margos screams and orders him to show his blacksmith license. He hands over the license, only to watch it snapped in two as Margos showers painful insults at him. Fake lowers his gaze, thinking he is finished with this country anyway. What worth is a license if it can be destroyed so easily? Margos offers false promises, saying if he serves another year, a new position might be arranged. But Fake refuses firmly, declaring he is no longer a blacksmith, and turns to leave despite the curses that follow. The knights mutter that no one will ever take in someone so useless, yet he ignores them, walking to the door with the resolve never to return. Outside, Alicia waits calmly, asking if he is finished. He wonders if she heard the mockery inside, but before he can answer, Margos and the knights rush out, greeting her with forced charm and compliments. She thanks them politely and asks only if Fake is done with his work, leaving them puzzled. Margos shares that the boy never had talent and wasted all the guidance given, but Alicia chuckles lightly, replying that his next post will be at her house. The knights are stunned, and when Margos insists Fake cannot even forge a proper weapon, she dismisses him, saying she sees talent where they do not. Margos agrees reluctantly but tries to offer himself instead, only for her to cut him down coldly, saying she has no interest. She takes Fake's hand and leads him away, while he follows with quiet aura, realizing that though she calls him only a fiancé in name, his own feelings for her grow deeper with every step. Leaving the empire of Rivenan behind, Fake and Alicia travel south toward the kingdom of Narst, where her father awaits in Bernest territory. After a long day's ride, they step down from the carriage. Fake stretches, while Alicia beside him remarks on the tiring journey. He answers with a smile that he isn't tired, though inside he worries about deceiving such a powerful noble. She assures him her father has been contacted, and is likely waiting already. He thinks about how fragile their cover truly is, yet when she reaches for his hand, admitting her own nervousness, he sees how natural she makes it seem. Wanting to match her resolve, he grips her hand firmly, but she startles with a small cry, forcing him to quickly let go and apologize. He insists it was just for the act, feeling guilty for overstepping, but she clings to his arm instead, gently saying it only surprised her. Blown away, he apologizes again, calling it harassment, but she shakes her head, softly telling him such moments aren't bad at all. His confusion deepens and he kept asking if surprise helps her act more naturally. He nods in understanding and follows Alicia into the castle, where her father sits waiting. The man studies him sharply and remarks that this is the blacksmith his daughter vouches for. Alicia speaks with quiet confidence, claiming his skills are unmatched, and asks her father to see the results for himself. The father retrieves a sword from the cupboard and hands it to Fake, instructing him to restore its broken enhancement. Fake accepts, unsheathing the blade and immediately noticing the intricate web of magic characters etched along its surface. Compared to the work he saw at court, this is reserved only for those of high rank, perhaps even a knight captain. Impressed by the delicate lettering and deep thought put into it, he decides it won't take long to repair since parts of the original enchantment remain intact. Placing the sword on the table, he studies the broken segments, thinking he only needs to replace the missing characters with the correct ones to rebuild the script. Alicia quietly asks how it's going, and he admits it's difficult to reproduce exactly, but he can recreate something with the same level of performance. With steady hands, he completes the restoration and presents the blade back to her father. Testing it with swift slashes through the air, the man sheathes it again, surprised at the flawless result. He acknowledges Fake's unexpected skill but firmly states he cannot yet accept him as his daughter's husband. Alicia apologizes softly, while Fake reflects that although the man is strict, he doesn't seem unreasonable after all. He tells himself that from now on he will work even harder, and her father agrees, urging him to keep at it. The man offers the mansion's workshop, promising free use of materials and even hands him a blacksmith's license for the country, warning him not to lose it. Hesitant, Fake asks if he is really free to forge as he pleases, and the father answers firmly that a blacksmith should do exactly that. A smile rises on his face but refuses to fade. After years of being forced to do nothing but enhancements, he can finally pursue true blacksmithing. Overwhelmed, he bows deeply, thanking him again and again. The father adds that knights in the mansion may have requests for weapons, so he should coordinate with the maids. With that, he excuses himself for business, reminding Fake not to do anything improper with his daughter while he is away. Fake quickly agrees, while Alicia walks beside him, relieved she managed to win her father's approval. She remarks that it is rare for him to praise anyone so openly, which means something. Fake admits he still hasn't been fully accepted, but he will continue to prove himself. When she says it feels good to hear such words from her father, he smiles, wondering if he has finally managed to repay her kindness even a little. Just then, a maid approaches in neat attire, greeting them politely with a calm smile. The maid introduces herself as Leffy, explaining she will be their guide around the mansion. Fake politely shares his own name, and she begins the tour. When they reach the workshop, she explains it was prepared exclusively for Alicia's husband. Fake glances around, noting how all workshops feel similar, but his eyes light up at the sight of a furnace that was something rare for him. He thinks about how blacksmithing is built on magic and how he seldom got to use tools like these, though it feels refreshing to touch them again. Leffy assures him to call if he needs anything, then leads them further, eventually showing him his private room. She repeats her offer of help before leaving. Alone at last, he sinks into the sofa, reflecting on how drastically his life has shifted in just a few days. Not long ago, he lived under constant threat of death, but now he has a beautiful, kind wife by his side, even if only in name. Throwing himself onto the bed, he revels in the thought that he no longer has to race against impossible deadlines, sacrifice sleep, or dread each morning. The freedom feels intoxicating, yet he quickly reminds himself that slacking off would damage Alicia's cover and ruin his reputation. He laughs quietly, deciding to start forging tomorrow at his own pace, for once without fear. Hoping that happiness awaits him in this new chapter, he drifts into peaceful sleep. In the corridor, Leffy reports to Alicia that Fake has been guided safely to his room, and Alicia thanks her for the effort. Leffy then asks how the plan went, and Alicia admits it turned out better than expected. Curious, Leffy presses for details, teasingly asking how far things have gone. Alicia tries to dodge, but Leffy reminds her that she had left earlier saying she would propose. Flustered, Alicia shouts for her not to say it aloud, and when Leffy insists, she blurts out that she did her best. Though she reminds herself it is only a cover relationship, the word marriage still makes her cheeks burn, and speaking about it so casually now feels overwhelming. Leffy, still puzzled, asks about the wedding date, and Alicia ends up recounting the whole story. After listening, Leffy comments that Alicia's feelings must be obvious to him already, which makes Alicia freeze in embarrassment. She thought she had hidden it well, but Leffy insists her emotions show plainly on her face, and the thought of Fake realizing she truly loves him leaves her restless. As Leffy encourages her not to worry, saying once the registration is complete, preparations for marriage can begin. Alicia hesitates, reminding her that their father's approval is still missing, and Leffy suggests that earning recognition as a blacksmith is the best path forward. Quietly, Alicia admits that their family tradition demands she marry someone with true forging skill, and though nobles rarely have the freedom to choose love, with Fake she feels she just might be able to have both. Leffy warns Alicia not to celebrate too soon, while on the other hand, Margot sits with a group of knights, all looking irritated and pissed. One slams his complaint about Fake not returning yet, calling him arrogant, and even threatening to cut his pay along with canceling the monthly drinking party. Another argues there's no need to recruit anyone new, and the rest nod in agreement before turning to Margot's for judgment. He calmly shifts the topic, asking what they know of the Bernest family. The knights only recall that they are dukes with the tradition of marrying their daughter to skilled blacksmiths. Margot's explains further, saying the family's roots lie in blacksmithing and that Fake's weak arms show no sign of such craft. Rumors already claim he can barely swing a hammer, and once even fainted mid-task. The others quickly conclude he will eventually be cast out of the Bernest house, and Morgus agrees, saying it is only a matter of time before he loses his place and has no choice but to crawl back. They decide to leave 2 weeks' worth of maintenance undone so that once he returns, Fake will be forced to shoulder it all as punishment for abandoning work. Margot's orders that Saida's knight be notified of this plan since he has other duties for now, but asks to keep using the sword temporarily. With grim satisfaction, the knights mutter that Fake will soon learn his lack of talent, while Morgus smirks to himself, plotting to grind Fake down harder than ever and push him away for good. Fake lies awake on the bed before dawn, groaning at his old habit of rising too early. Memories of court life weigh on him, days that began before sunrise and stretched until midnight, filled with endless work and enhancement tasks far beyond ordinary smithing. Back then, unfinished work carried into the next day, a brutal cycle with no escape. Now, he sits in the quiet, realizing that waking early leaves him with nothing pressing to do. Deciding to use the time, he heads into the forge, picking up a lump of witch iron and noting its rarity and importance. Unlike ordinary ores, that requires endless mining, witch iron comes from demons. Its magic allows the blades to hold sharper edges when enhanced. Pulling on sturdy gloves made from demon hide, he focuses his magic, fire swirling around the ore as he heats it. He reflects on the grades of which iron, from the precious S-rare to the common E and F-rare pieces filling this workshop. With a small smile, he admits this stock isn't remarkable but will serve well enough for his purpose today. He isn't aiming to craft a legendary weapon, so he settles on making a simple knife. The iron glows red under the heat, and his work begins. He watches the iron glow red and says it's time to move on to molding, raising the heat further. In the past, blacksmiths relied on fire pits to temper steel, but those methods are hardly seen anymore. Using earth magic, he shapes clay into a mold, then seals it with water magic before pouring in the molten iron. Once set, he removes the hardened piece onto a plate, heats it to soften, and begins striking with a mallet. Each blow rings out, a sound that feels oddly comforting. He works in rhythm, heating and cooling the iron repeatedly, knowing this strengthens both the metal and the magical imprint within. Still, he admits he lacks the time to craft properly, and should prepare more ore beforehand. Opening the mold, he finds the unsharpened knife, pleased that the form is right. To harden it, he applies sinterite clay, explaining that it cools and reinforces the magic within. He reminds himself to watch for magical disruption before coating. Extending a hand, he casts a bubble of water, then he submerges the knife, and squints at the rippling patterns left by the clay. With a happy expression, he calls on wind magic, and he began sharpening the blade until it shines with a polished surface. Finally, he channels his power into enhancing the knife, and when the glow fades, the blade is complete. He thinks it's time to test the blade and swings it down against a block, slicing it clean in half. Nodding with satisfaction, he praises his own work. The sharpness of the knife is flawless, and the weight well balanced. It has been a while since he last crafted something, so 3 hours for this knife feels fair. Realizing he had forgotten the meal like old times when work always pushed food aside. Just then, he notices Alicia standing nearby and shouts in surprise, asking when she arrived. She replies that Leafy mentioned he went to the workshop, so she came to see, adding that he looked deeply focused. Meeting her gaze, he finds himself staring at her every move, and after this, flustered, she tells him not to stare so much, or she'll feel embarrassed. He covers his face, cursing himself, then blurts out that he's sorry but she just looks too cute. Her cheeks flush as she stutters at the word cute, and he quickly says as her fiancé, it should be fine to look. She mumbles that it's alright, and his mind floods with restless thoughts. He wonders when the right time for honesty is, reminding himself that he's only a fake fiancé, while she acts like she isn't even aware of how their eyes keep meeting. In the next part, she proves to him that she is a noble and not a random girl who could be taken lightly. As both of them grow closer, darker and painful injuries heal and a beautiful story takes a dramatic turn to a fulfilling ending.